Hi everyone, good afternoon and assalamu alaikum. Thank you for watching The Perspective Nuqta Nazar with Uwais Iqbal on Geo TV. February 5th is observed as Kashmir Day by Kashmiris and Pakistanis around the world to show solidarity with Kashmiri people living in illegally Indian occupied Kashmir. In today's show, we are going to look from Canadian perspective as we can see that this conflict is in the making for 70 plus years and oppression and genocide is continue to take place. But unfortunately, the world superpowers, including Canada, is silent to bring justice and to help influence the implementation of United Nations resolution for Kashmiri people to have their right of self-determination. I'm really pleased to welcome Karen Rodman, who's the Director of Just Peace Advocate, in today's show to speak from the Canadian perspective and, what are we seeing, what's the state of the nation and why Canada is silent in this case when it comes to, help resolve the conflict between India and Pakistan to help the Kashmiri people. Karen, welcome to the show. Hope you're doing well.
Shukriya. Assalamu alaikum. It's my pleasure to be here.
Wa alaikum assalam and thank you. Why not you tell us a little bit more about yourself and please don't hesitate to mention your visit to Kashmir region in 2019.
Sure. My name is Karen Rodman. I am with an organization, a not-for-profit organization, Just Peace Advocates, which has a primary focus initially on Palestine, but we have been really focusing on Kashmir, realizing that both are occupied territories and both are territories, especially since March of 2020 for Kashmir, for Indian-occupied Kashmir areas under settler colonization in breach of the Fourth Geneva Convention. So we do a lot of anti-imperial, anti-capitalist type work in that regard and working with other partners here in Canada around the foreign policy issues. I am a retired civil servant who for 30 years worked with the provincial government and am an ordained United Church minister in 2015, but have really been focusing on the work with Palestine and Kashmir subsequent to that. As you mentioned, I had the privilege and the honor to be able to go to Azad, Jammu Kashmir in 2019, in December 2019, just before COVID took over the world and all of our lives. So very grateful that I had that opportunity at that time and was able to go to Muzaffarabad and also over towards the line of control and at the line of control at that time and meet with the people who, for the most part, what we did, of course, we did have a chance to attend and see the parliament in AJK or Jammu Kashmir, but we also, as a small human rights delegation, were able to meet with people who were displaced in the 1990s, that last wave of people who were exiled from Indian-occupied Kashmir, hoping that they would go home at the time, and now here they are, 30 some years later, still in camps in and around Muzaffarabad, and so we had a chance to meet with them at that time as well.
Yes, and I also visited Muzaffarabad just a few weeks ago, and I had the opportunity to see the situation firsthand, as you did, and that makes a big difference. I mean, you being Canadian, looking things from here, but being on the ground and looking at the reality changes the perspective. So, what I would like to do before we carry on our conversation around the topic, why Canada is silent or what is our stance, in terms of bring justice to Kashmiri people, I would like to show this video clip to our viewers just to refresh their memories and to show the state of the nation. What is happening right now and, what is this conflict all about?
Every year, on 5th February, Pakistanis and Kashmiris from Azad Kashmir and all over the world celebrate Kashmir Day to show solidarity with their Kashmiri brothers. The purpose of celebrating this day is to remind United Nations and the international community that why are the promises made to Kashmiris on the biggest platform of the world still unfulfilled. On this day, Pakistanis and Kashmiris form a human chain to convey a message to the whole world that the Pakistanis and Kashmiris living on both sides of the line of control are one and no power on earth can separate them. The Indian occupation of Kashmir is not only illegal but also against nature, as 80% of the Kashmiri population is Muslim, and according to the rules of division of subcontinent, it was natural for Kashmir to be part of Pakistan. But owing to the conspiracy of Sir Redcliffe, the Muslim majority area of Gurdaspur was included in India, and this is how India was granted ground access to enter and occupy Kashmir. This was confessed by Kapil Sibal, the Congress member and the member of Indian Parliament, during an assembly meeting while being stopped by the Speaker Assembly and other parliamentarians.
इतिहास की बात है कि हम समझते हैं कि पंडित नेहरू जी की वजह से कश्मीर हमारे पक्ष में आया। अगर रैडक्लिफ अवार्ड न होता, गुरदासपुर हमारे पास नहीं दिया जाता और जो मेजॉरिटी का प्रिंसिपल था उसको अपनाया जाता तो शायद कश्मीर हमारे पास कभी आता ही नहीं। लेकिन असलियत तो ये है कि रैडक्लिफ अवार्ड के द्वारा गुरदासपुर हमें मिला, वो लिंकेज हमें मिला और उसकी वजह से जम्मू कश्मीर में हमारे पक्ष में आया।
Kapil Sibal's statement itself is an acceptance of the fact that Kashmir was a natural part of Pakistan and India had illegally occupied it. This is the reason why Kashmiris want freedom from India and accession with Pakistan and have been trying to get freedom from the Indian illegal occupation for the past 73 years. They have been rendering unprecedented sacrifices to get rid of the evil clutches of India. However, India is using every inhuman and unlawful method to keep them enslaved. On August 5, 2019, Kashmiris were stripped of their identity by revoking Article 370 and a curfew was imposed. All means of traveling and communication, including the internet and mobile service, were cut off. Kashmir was isolated from the rest of the world so that the oppression and violation of human rights happening in Kashmir could be kept hidden from the world. Kashmiri youth, who have been at the forefront of the freedom movement, are the major target of Indian forces of occupation. They are being arrested and martyred in fake encounters. They have been maimed, amputated, and disabled as a consequence of the brutal torture being carried out at the interrogation centers. And more than 10,000 innocent Kashmiris have been disappeared forever. The Kashmiri men and women who raise their voices against the Indian brutality are being oppressed indiscriminately. The pellet gun banned throughout the world is being used on Kashmiris relentlessly.
Armed forces there, they have complete impunity. There's a legislation called the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, wherein that the army personnel, whatever they do, they rape, they disappear, they murder, they torture people there randomly, and then they cannot be prosecuted. Government of India is convinced that they can get away with everything, whatever she is doing in Kashmir.
The occupation forces stepped up the genocide of the Kashmiri populace through fake encounters in the name of courts with so-called terrorists. The increasing acts of state terrorism have further strengthened Kashmiris' belief that their survival is linked with Pakistan. Russell Tribunal on Kashmir, held recently in Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina, is a positive development, and it has proved a new hope for Kashmiris. This grassroots initiative is designed to shed light on war crimes and crimes against humanity committed by India and Kashmir.
I can see a lot of similarities between genocide that happened in Bosnia in 1990s and the genocide that happened and that is currently happening in Kashmir.
Another positive development from Kashmiri's viewpoint in December 2021 was the United Nations General Assembly in New York adopted with consensus a Pakistan-sponsored resolution titled Universal Realization of the Right of the Peoples to Self-Determination, which unequivocally supports the right to self-determination for all peoples under subjugation, alien domination, and foreign occupation, including those of Indian-occupied Kashmir. The adoption of the resolution with consensus has provided the people of Indian-occupied Kashmir a new hope in their just struggle for self-determination and freedom from oppression and occupation. To stop gross human rights violations in occupied Jammu and Kashmir and implement UN resolutions by holding a free and fair plebiscite to give the people of Kashmir their inherent right to self-determination.
Yes, viewers, now you have better understanding of, why Kashmiris and Pakistanis observe Kashmir Day, every year on February 5th. And you saw some of the key things, things taking place over 2021 in terms of, resolutions and other things. But let's look at this from Canadian perspective. So, Karen, before I go on a break, I'd like to see, we just had federal elections a little while ago. What can you tell us in terms of what is the stance of our government, the other parties, the opposition, and few other political parties on this issue of Kashmir?
Yes, so during the federal election in the fall of 2021, a number of us worked with different groups to do the I Vote Kashmir campaign, which was really an awareness campaign that put a number of questions to all candidates from all of the parties in all of the constituencies or ridings across the country. And we did get a response from the Bloc Québécois party that was quite positive at that time. And we did also get responses from a number of candidates running for the NDP and the Green Party, although none of those particular individuals did secure a seat during the election. But it was important because, we ended up with people volunteering across Canada to be in touch with their individual people running in their ridings in about a third of the ridings across the country, as well as the outreach that we did to everyone. So I think a lot of it was about awareness, and certainly some of the people who are running were very, very aware of the Kashmir situation. Others, I'm sure it wasn't even something they had really heard about before. Our parliament has been very, very silent. There really hadn't been mention of Kashmir in parliament since the early 2000s, almost 20 years ago, until three parliamentary petitions were put forward in, I guess that was 2020, by three parties. It was the Liberal, the NDP, and Conservative all did put petitions forward, but the responses back from the Liberal government were certainly not adequate at the time.
Not adequate at the time. So viewers, we'll take a quick break here. And anytime and every time when we see conflict happening, as Karen initially talked about, the issue of Palestine, the issue of Kashmir, and there are many other regions having similar challenges, the solution to these challenges lies under political solution, right? And that's why we need these governments to step up. And always we ask this question, what can I do as an individual? And this is what we will talk about after we come back from the break. Viewers, welcome back, and thank you so much. You stayed with us after the break. In today's show, we're talking about the Canadian perspective when it comes to the conflict of Kashmir between India and Pakistan, as February 5th is observed as Kashmir Day around the world by Kashmiris and Pakistanis to show solidarity with Kashmiri people in Kashmir. So, Karen, you were talking about the responses from the different political parties, especially when we look at the Liberal Party, who's the governing party. You said their response was not adequate. Can you elaborate a bit more on it? I mean, did you guys reach out to PM office? Did you guys reach out to other people, those who are more influential and responsible in the government?
Yeah, so from 2019 on, from August 5th, 2019, when Article 35A and 370 were revoked, and that's really maybe more when I became engaged as an ally, we were reaching out with a letter writing. There's been thousands and thousands of letters written asking for an understanding and some action to hold India accountable, and certainly requesting meetings and sharing information and that sort of thing. I mean, the three most tangible things were the three petitions were quite tangible because they were very specific calls that were being made, and they were answers around sort of working towards keeping from things escalating in the area, that kind of response, but it really didn't answer the questions that were being asked at all. Also, there was during 2020 requests made to the subcommittee, the Human Rights Subcommittee of the Foreign Affairs Parliamentary Committee, as well as to the Senate Human Rights Committee, to actually hold hearings and review the situation in Kashmir. Now, I know it's been a bit of an unusual time with COVID and the way Parliament sat during the last session 43, but despite those requests going in, and despite us having met with a couple of members of the Liberal Party who were involved in those committees and encouraged us on how to do that, those items were dropped at the time that the writ was dropped for the election, so we would have to go back and re-engage. We have also met with Senate and Senate staff as well as on the parliamentary side. So there's been that engagement, also sharing reports as they've come out, and webinars. We did a webinar in the fall of 2020 that was quite detailed on the situation and Canada's silence on the colonization happening in Indian-occupied Kashmir. So those things were shared. A few of the staff, political staff, have attended some of our webinars and helped to inform themselves. So that's been encouraging.
So what do you think? I mean, when you are advocating in the political system, you're talking to different parties, and you know that each party, and obviously Canada is a metropolitan society. I mean, we, Pakistanis living here, similarly, Indian brothers and sisters living here, and they also have very strong roots in Canadian politics, right? So do you see objection when you're talking about the rights of Kashmiris, how the Indian people and Indian politicians are reacting to such advocacy efforts?
Yeah, I'm not sure that we're seeing that specifically. I'm sure that those discussions happen in the back room and understanding, and different groups will be talking to different politicians and staff and senators and other people for sure. Certainly, the trade and the aspects of trade and the broader geopolitical situation, including with China and all of really Eastern Asia, all of course play into those decision-making factors. So, but certainly to bring the human rights cases directly and to their attention, and to understand that, and certainly things like very recently with the detention of Karam Parvez is a good example where people have spoken out around the world, organizations like Amnesty and RAPTO, and in the media, not so much in Canada, in fact not in Canada, but in the U.S., New York Times and Washington Post and other media across the Arab world have spoken out, and leading figures have as well. To be able to bring that to the attention of Canadian decision makers, both within the government system and broader civic society awareness as well.
So you visited Azad Jammu and Kashmir, the Kashmir on the Pakistan side. And obviously, people would want to know: do you have any intentions to visit the other side of the line of control, the Indian-occupied Kashmir, so you can have even a better view? So, is there anything you guys are planning yourself or the human rights groups?
Yeah, well, at this point, no, I don't think it would be that easy to do that based on the experience of others, and then of course, COVID really has impacted how people travel and people are doing in the last 2 years since we would have returned from Azad, Jammu, Kashmir. I mean, but I mean, there are lots of people that we're in touch with that know what's going on in Srinagar and know what's going on in the valley, and it's pretty grave. I mean, the silencing, the fear, the situation. I mean, it is really hyperdrive settler colonization in a way that resources and the structures are changing. So I think that information is there, but no, at this point, not to travel there. It might be worth mentioning too, and I know you, as you said, you've just returned from AJK and been in some of maybe the same places we were, talking to people. I mean, what we were really struck with was that in I think 3 of the camps that we visited, we were told that we were the first internationals they had seen, with the exception of in one which had been damaged at the time of the earthquake. So obviously they were getting humanitarian crisis emergency support at that time. But that's so different, because having spent time in Palestine, I mean, within the refugee camps within the West Bank as an example, I mean, there's internationals all the time. Every day there'd be many internationals in many of the refugee camps coming in. So that was really sobering for us in the sense of the lack of awareness and the lack of attention internationally on Kashmir, even in Azad, Jammu Kashmir.
Yeah, it's very surprising and sadness. I mean, sad to hear this. What you're saying is very few international groups are going and seeing this situation, even in Azad Jammu and Kashmir. So what would you tell the viewers here? Because we the Pakistanis, we the Kashmiris, right? We live in different parts of the world. Yes, so we have been told about, or we have been seeing the Kashmiri conflict for so many years, but probably we may not, I mean, in the big numbers, paying too much attention or maybe doing our part. What would you suggest? I mean, what can we do as an individual by living here in Canada, America, and other parts of the world?
Yeah, well, for sure, because people understand the issue. I mean, I've had to kind of learn about the issue because it wasn't something that I was that aware of. But to be able to bring it to decision makers is really, really important. And I mean, I think there's lessons we can learn from watching with Palestine, because certainly, people have been able to bring the issue related to Palestine or other issues to their members of parliament. So I think to be able to share information, to have that dialogue, to keep it on the agenda is important. And in the case of Quebec and the Bloc Québécois, just to return to that point, I mean, they had very clearly indicated they had been in touch diplomatically with India around holding India accountable, and more than that they were prepared to consider a motion in Parliament in that regard. So since the election, they've been very quiet. We haven't been able to get that response, but I know this program is in English, but certainly for those who have connections with people in Quebec, that would be very, very important to have that dialogue, because there seems to be an awareness around the situation within the Bloc Québécois. For whatever reasons might be driving that, it would be important, I think, to keep that conversation going as well.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you so much, Karen. And on behalf of the community, we thank you for all your efforts, for your team, your group, that you are standing for the humanity. You spoke about Palestine, you spoke about Kashmir, and there may be other regions and other parts of the world where people are in poor situation, and they've been affected by genocide and these kind of illegal occupations and illegal use of weapon, and you name it, what we are seeing in Kashmir. So thank you so much. And the efforts you brought forward, you talked about Bloc Québécois, you talked about the advocacy you're doing within the Canadian governments. We certainly believe that one day they are going to deliver their fruit. It's now up to us that how can we stand together with you and other people. Keep talking about the issue of Kashmir and making sure that right people are hearing from us. And you also touched upon very important point is we also need to make ourselves fully aware of this situation. We think that we know everything, but probably we don't even understand this whole conflict in the true meaning, so we can convey it to our politicians and people who we live with, people who we work with in Canada and around the world. So once again, thank you so much, Karen, for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. Viewers, I will close this program with this short video clip and see what Dr. Umar Suleiman has spoke about this issue of Kashmir. अपना ख्याल रखिएगा, इंशाल्लाह अगले हफ्ते आपसे फिर मुलाकात होगी. अस्सलामु अलैकुम.
The contradiction that India is referred to as the world's largest democracy, while not only recently enshrining Modi's fascism into law with the Citizenship Act, but continuing to maintain the most militarized zone in the world in Kashmir with up to 1 million troops. It's when our global conscience has been sufficiently disturbed that we're able to activate the necessary pressure to stop genocide. Working against us in that regard is that the purveyors of violence, settler colonialism, and ethnic cleansing maintain not just superior military capacity, but the ability to black out, bomb, and cripple the media exposure of those crimes.